So we just sang this song, Here Comes Heaven. And these words are up here. They were repeated over and over. Here comes heaven. Here comes heaven. And maybe if you're a little familiar with the Christmas story, and as you consider the story of Christmas and Jesus coming to this world, it seems heaven-like. Let's talk about some of the elements. There's this bright, shining star in the sky, and it's in the heavens, and it's leading people to worship Jesus. It's bringing the wise men, and the shepherds see it, and it's just peaceful, and it's heaven-like. And then we see that these shepherds are brought from their work and out in the fields, and they're brought in, and suddenly they're in this manger, this cave. And when we think about it in our minds, it's heaven-like, right? That we say like the cattle are lowing. They're not even making a sound. Suddenly, no animal makes a sound. I don't think that's real. But in the songs at least, it's like, this is heaven. I mean, it doesn't smell funny. It's just great. It's heaven-like. And we say, oh, the baby, no crying he makes, which is a lie. You know that, right? Even Jesus cried as a baby. If you don't believe me, I'll loan you one of our babies, okay? I'll show you babies cry. But we get this picture of heaven and Christmas, and all of it that night makes so much sense. It's like, yeah, of course, there's angels singing, and all of it's heaven, and here it comes, and here's heaven on earth. But let's talk about today. Let's talk about December 23rd, 2018. And Christmas is in 2 days. And maybe you're looking at what's coming, and you're not saying, man, here comes heaven. In fact, it's church. You're like, I think hell's coming, all right? I don't know who's going to show up. I don't know who's going to come. I don't know who I invited that I really hope doesn't come. It's just we had to invite them, right? Because we can be real. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I look at my relationships, and man, it doesn't feel like heaven there. There's brokenness. There's pain. There's people who have lied to me. There's hurt. There's still some unforgiveness in here. It doesn't feel like heaven. Maybe for you, you're looking at your finances. I mean, is there any other time of the year where we are so reminded of maybe how much we don't have? We're seeing the advertisements, and you know, like your one hope is that no one suggests a grab bag in the office, right? Like just no, let's just not exchange gifts. I'll give out hugs and high fives this year, right? That's my budget. Because we're reminded, they're already doing it. We're reminded like, hey, this is where I want to land. Because my finances, man, there's not heaven there. And be serious, for some of us, it's our health. I mean, you're hoping for a different report. You're hoping for things to change. You're doing everything right. And yet there's no heaven in your health. And we say things like, my schedule is hectic. You ever notice? We say hectic, not heaven-tic. It's like my schedule, there's just so much going on. And it's the opposite of peace. It's the opposite of grace. It's the opposite of heaven. I mean, I'm not declaring here comes heaven in Christmas 2018. Maybe it worked a long, long time ago. And it reads well and preaches well, and it's good kid story, and we'll make movies out of it. But that's the question I want us to ask today. What would it look like for you today to actually believe, yes, here comes heaven. Yes, everything's still there. The parties are still there. The relationships are still as they are. My health is still there. My finances are still there. But when it comes to me and God, when it comes to this vertical thing, here comes heaven. Here is something different this Christmas season, and not just for Christmas, but beyond into 2019 and preferably every day and year that we have as a gift on this planet. So to answer that, here comes heaven, the question is, why Christmas in the first place? I mean, why did God send his son into this world to be born in a cave, to be born of a virgin? All of these different elements we read about and we ponder and we consider. What was the whole point? What was the big deal of Christmas? There was a man named Matthew who was one of Jesus' 12 disciples. And when Matthew thought about why Christmas and why did Jesus come, when Matthew wrote, he remembered the words of a man named Isaiah, who was a Jewish prophet, who had talked about Jesus coming to the world hundreds of years before he actually came. And when Matthew remembers Isaiah's words, he finds why Jesus came. I want to read it to you. Matthew chapter 1, verse 22. All of this, all of Christmas, it all took place. Why? To fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. What was that? It's that the virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Immanuel, which means God with us. So as Matthew is reflecting, he finds this word here, Immanuel, which means God with us. That's his big takeaway from the prophecy. He says, I know that I heard, and it was written down when Isaiah declared that Jesus would come, the Messiah would come into this world, that he would be given the name, the title Immanuel, which means God with us. And today, as we ask, okay, here comes heaven, that sings good. Here comes heaven, it makes sense years ago. How can I sing that and not just words on a screen or lyrics to a song, but actually experience that? I believe the answer is in the title, Immanuel. It is in the name that Jesus carries, God with us. That if today you would kind of be open and say, okay, I want to be stirred and changed from this gathering. I want to discover something and leave with something. These three words, God with us, God with us, if we can understand them, I believe that is how we start to see, here comes heaven in our lives. And let me preface this. It doesn't mean that by believing this and seeing it, that suddenly every relationship is put back together and you're going to get home and man, there's money in your mailbox. Praise God. I wish that for you. I wish it for me. But it doesn't mean that. It means when we're still experiencing the brokenness and when there is still pain and there's still question marks and there's things that aren't turning out the way we thought, that still there is God with us in those moments. That's the truth I want you to grab today. So to discover that, we're going to read the words of a man named John. Now, before we read his words, I want to tell you a little bit about him. John was another one of Jesus' disciples. He was one of the 12 that Jesus called. Jesus called him and his brother and other followers to come and follow him. And so John followed Jesus for 3 years, and he saw the miracles, and he saw the resurrections, and he saw the teachings, and then he ultimately saw Jesus die on the cross and come back to life. And when Jesus was on the cross, he spoke right to John and said, John, you're going to take care of Mary. You're going to take care of my mother. He says, Mom, this is going to be your son. So he kind of brings them into this relationship. So think about that, because I would have loved to have been John. When Jesus ascends to heaven, John gets to spend all this time with Mary. John gets to hear all the stories that Mary would tell him. Think about their morning conversations. They wake up and John says, Mary, tell me another story about Jesus, about your boy. When did you know that he was God? And she would say, well, I was giving him a bath and he walked on the water, right? I don't know if it's not in the Bible, okay? But I don't know, man, we were serving dinner and suddenly there was way more food than I put out. I don't know what happened. I left him alone in the kitchen, right? But who knows? Jesus and Mary, they're having these conversations, John and Mary rather, about Jesus. And then John, we know from history, he outlives all the other disciples. Every other disciple is martyred before John. John's martyr comes by being cast out to an island. He's exiled. Scholars believe that he's burned first with oil, and he's just left there on this island of Patmos. So John has this grand experience with Jesus. And John says, people need to hear this. They need to know this. In fact, if you go to the end of John's writings, he tells us why he wrote. He says, it's so that all might believe that Jesus was God. That's his whole purpose in writing. But John is going to sit down and he's going to write the account of Jesus, the birth, the life, the death, the resurrection, the miracles, everything. Because he wants his first century audience to believe what he believed. And so he goes to write. Now, what's interesting is that when John goes to start writing, he doesn't start the way Matthew and Luke do. They start with Christmas. Right? We read from Matthew 1. In just a few moments, we're going to have people read from Luke chapter 2, which if you've ever seen a Charlie Brown Christmas, it's what Linus reads, okay? So you've probably heard it, Luke chapter 2, and in those days, a census, that. They start there. But John, when he goes to write, he doesn't start at Christmas. He starts years, millennia, and eternity before that. When he goes to write about Jesus and who he believes he is, he starts all the way back in the beginning. And these are his opening words. John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, before we read on, I want to do a spoiler alert here, okay? Because John's going to explain himself as he goes, but I think John is just so excited, he just needs to start writing. And so he starts this. But the Word is Jesus. He's going to tell us that. We're going to read it. So John is saying, in the beginning, and I'm sure he remembers reading the words in what we call Genesis, where he remembers, in the beginning, God created. And when John goes to write, he follows the same thing. He goes, in the beginning was Jesus. And Jesus was with God. And don't miss this, Jesus was God. And he goes on and he says, he was in the beginning with God, and all things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. So here's the question. Here's the big issue that we need to talk about today, and that you've maybe asked before, you've thought before, and it's this: is Jesus God? That's the question that every one of us, we have to land somewhere with this. Is he God? Now, listen, right now where we live in our culture, in our society, and in our timeline in history, 99.9%, I'll say, because I want to say 100%. But most scholars, we like I'm one of them. And you are too now. Congratulations. You didn't know you were a scholar today. But all of us in its humanity, we agree on this. Jesus existed. Okay, you're not going to find that debate happening anymore, anywhere. You could go home and watch the History Channel, okay? He's there. We all believe that. He existed. That's not the question. The question is he God? Did he come back from the dead? That's the hinge point. Does that make sense? That's the big question. It's not, was there a Jesus? Yes, there was a Jesus. The question is he God? Did he actually die and come back to life? And so that's the question with God with us. If Jesus is not God, the title Immanuel falls apart on the first word. It's not God with us. It's good teacher with us. It's prophet with us. It's angel with us. It's man with us. It's very different than what Isaiah said hundreds of years prior. He said, Jesus is Immanuel, God with us. So that's the big question. Now, Jesus himself, this is interesting, claimed to be God. He claimed to be God. He called himself the Son of God, which was equally saying to his culture, I'm God. There's no separation between me and God. I am equal, which is why they got so mad and said that's blasphemy. Now, here's the issue with that, okay? Let me test this on you. I want to let you all know that I am God, okay? I hear chuckles happening and smirks are around the room. Why? Because so what if I make a claim about myself, right? Think about that. So what if I say it? I'm God. So what if Jesus just stood up and said, hey, by the way, nice to meet you. I'm Jesus Christ, Son of God. How are you doing? Who cares if you make your own claim is what I would say. I can claim anything I want about me. Now, what is interesting is that in other religions and other belief systems, the leader of those organizations never claims to be God, but just a way to know God. So here's the path of enlightenment. I am a prophet speaking on behalf of God. But Jesus was different. He actually did say, no, I'm the Son of God. I am he. Over and over, he describes himself that way. But still, I say, all right, but you can make any claim you want. I'm going to give you a big term you can use at your Christmas party. You'll sound super smart, okay? It's circular reasoning. Circular reasoning is when you use the source to prove the source. So it'd be like if I just open up the Bible and I say, well, the Bible says Jesus is God, and close it and tell you, now do something with it. You'll say, but all you did was take what you believe to be true to describe something you already, does that make sense? That's you're going in a circle. We're never going to find common ground. So let me introduce this to you. John, who believed what he wrote, it's why he wrote it, it's why he died for it, believed Jesus was God. John was a first century Jewish man. That matters. If John had been a first century Greek or Roman, and he says Jesus is God, I would have said, of course he is to you. You're a polytheist. Everything is God to you. This is how that world worked. If you needed a God, you just go to the local God shop. Hey, I'm having a problem with my cows. Where's the cow God? I've got a problem with children. I got a problem with finances. I got a problem with my crops. Find me a God. Don't worry, we've got you. In fact, we read in Acts that there was one city that literally set up a God to the unknown God just in case they missed one. We're just going to call this one the just in case God. So that's Roman Greco world first century. That's normal. Then there were others who were pantheists, which just believed that God was in everything. He was a spirit. He's in the chairs, the trees, the leaves. And again, if John had been that, I could understand his conversion from Judaism over to, well, of course. But John was a first century Jew. And there's one primary doctrine that you do not mess with if you're a first century Jew. And it's there is one God. His name is Jehovah. He is the God of Abraham. He is the God of Moses. And we don't mess with that God. You mess with that God, you get stoned. You get killed. We cast you out. And so Jesus shows up and starts making claims. First century Jews believe him. They give their life for this. Now, if that's still too far back in the past, let me introduce you to a man named C.S. Lewis, who in the 1900s converted from being an atheist to believing in Jesus as Lord, as God. And C.S. Lewis was a brilliant man, a British philosopher, thinker, author. Maybe if you've seen Chronicles of Narnia, that's one of his more common works in our culture right now. But amazing man, he wrote many things. And he came from doubting and just believing there was no God to now believing Jesus is God. And when he surveyed it, he gave 3 categories that Jesus could fit in. And these were the 3. He said he's either a liar, he's a lunatic, or he's Lord. This is just C.S. Lewis's words. 1929 when he converts. He says, I think that he's got to be one of the 3. He's either a liar. He is the greatest deceiver this world has ever seen. Somehow he faked his own death. He got the disciples to take the body. All the miracles were fake. I mean, the greatest liar you've ever met. Or he was completely out of his mind. He was a lunatic. No one should have taken him serious. He's crazy. And for 2,000 years, crazy people have been following their crazy leader, right? Some of you are like, that's exactly what my aunt's going to say on Tuesday, right? Just crazy people do that. Then he says, but I don't think it's either of those. I really think he's Lord. I believe that when John wrote, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, he is God. Immanuel, God. And then we get to this next word, with. Now, before we read what John writes, before Jesus walked this earth, when God was with people, it was terrifying. I mean, absolutely scary. When you read about the accounts of God being with people, it's in the form of like, there's one where he's this pillar of fire and he's leading people. Abraham has this moment with God and he says, I have no idea. It's like a smoking pot. He literally runs out of words. It's like a bubbling water pot. That's all I could think of. It's terrifying. In fact, that's why when you read and angels would show up, and the presence of God would be, what's the first thing they say to people? Don't be afraid. Why? Because I'm scary. Because you're going to lose your mind with how terrifying I am right now. So the first thing I want to say to you is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. So all this time when God is with people, it's absolutely terrifying. His glory is overwhelming. John writes this in John chapter 1:14. He says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory. We've seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father full of grace and truth. And there's this phrase here, made his dwelling, which literally means tabernacled. It's just, we don't use that as a normal word. So when we translate this over from John's Greek and we see it, we say made his dwelling, but the word that's literally used, the best word is that he tabernacled. And that matters. Probably a lot to a first century Jewish audience, but it could and should matter to us today. See, when people experienced the presence of God before Jesus was here, they experienced him in this tabernacle sense. When God used Moses to bring the people of Israel out of Egyptian captivity, he gave them instructions to build this tent structure that was called a tabernacle. And it was in that tabernacle that the presence of God would be experienced. It's where the glory of God was. Later, it became the temple, a physical, one-place structure. And so John, as he's thinking about the glory of God, he's saying, but now that same glory that used to tabernacle, now actually tabernacled with us. We've seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son from the one and only Father. Moses, this leader who God gave the 10 Commandments to. Maybe you've seen some kind of a movie, The Prince of Egypt or The Plagues or something. That guy Moses, when he was given instructions to build the tabernacle and experience God, Moses asked this question. Maybe you've asked it before. He basically says to God, God, I want to experience you. We read in Exodus, he says, please let me see your glory. Come on, God, we're following you and this tent thing is cute and that's nice, but I want to experience you, God. I want to see your glory. But look what God says to him. God said, I will make my goodness pass right in front of you. I will call out the name God right before you. I'll treat well whomever I want to treat well, and I'll be kind to whomever I want to be kind. God continued, but you may not see my face. No one can see me and live. Think about that. God's like, that's awesome, you want to see me. You see me, you die. Are we clear here? This is how this works, Moses. I'll let you see me, but then you die. Because you can't experience my glory. There's no way that you could actually experience my glory. I'm just too good. So my kindness is too kind. You can't experience me. You get me, you die afterwards. This is Moses' experience. Moses is told, if you want to experience the glory of God, it is going to come at the cost of your own life. And then John, thousands of years later, says, but we have seen his glory and live to tell about it. Why? Because it didn't cost them their lives to see God's glory. It cost Jesus his. Think about that. God says to Moses, you want to see me? It's going to cost you life. Now, Christmas, Jesus, you want to see me? It's going to cost life, but not yours. My son's going to come into this world to die so that my glory might be experienced by you. So that here comes heaven in the brokenness, in the good times, in the celebrations, in the sorrows. Here it comes. But that brings us to our last word. God, Jesus is God. He is with us in a way where we do not die in his presence, but who is the us? Because I would love it. Maybe you're saying this today. I would love it if Immanuel meant God with all. I mean, isn't that what God's about? Doesn't he just love all people? He loves everyone. Yes, he does. But let's talk about Christmas. Who was it that was brought into the Christmas story? We had shepherds, those who were outcasts and lowly. And we had wise men, those with wealth and honor. When Jesus walked this planet, who was it that walked with him? Well, we get descriptions that there was tax collectors and notorious sinners. But there was also the religious and Pharisees who believed in him. That there were Jewish people and there were Roman soldiers. That there were men and that there were women. All of them coming to Jesus and believing. So then it seems like the description should be God with all. I mean, it seems like all people are coming. But look at what John writes. John 1, chapter 10. He came into the very world he created, but the world didn't recognize him. He came to his own people, and even they rejected him. See, John, in reflecting on what he experienced, saw that Jesus came to a Jewish world. People who had the scriptures, people who had Moses, they had the writings, they had the law, they had everything to point them to Jesus coming. And when he came, they rejected him. There's no way you're the guy. We were looking for the guy. You're not him. There's no way. Not from Nazareth. There's no way. And they rejected him and pushed him aside. Look what John writes next. One of my favorite statements in the entirety of all the writings we have, John 1:12. But to all, there's our word all, but to all who believed him and accepted him, he gave the right to be called children of God. He gave the right that we might become children of God. Where's the all? It's right there. But it's to all who believe him. It's to all who accept him. I want to word it this way. And if you're grammar police, just chill for a second, all right? I know it's not right. All are invited. Us have responded. I want you to remember that. Every single person here, we believe that every single person in this planet has been invited into a relationship with God through the work of Jesus Christ, through the Holy Spirit at work, adopting us into the family of God. Yet, all who believe, all who receive him, there is an us who have responded. And the beauty is that today, December 23rd, you are invited to respond to Jesus coming and dying so that you might experience the glory of God in your life without cost to you losing yours. He laid down his life so that you might experience the glory of God. That's why we sing. That's why we celebrate. That's why we can say things like, now behold his glory. Right? We sang this before. Now behold his glory, glory in the highest. All the earth rejoice, for Christ is born. Our team is going to sing this again. But I'm hoping that as we sing it, it's a little different this time. Because we can sing and we can come together. And I'm so grateful that every one of you are here. But I want it to mean something tomorrow and Christmas Day and in January and February. I want these words about the glory of God to be true all year long. Yes, when it hurts, when there's pain, when there's question marks, when there's waiting, when there's hoping, but still we would say, but we behold his glory. And that's why, hear me, that's why we gather every week. It's not to come to church. It's to come and be encouraged. It's to come and be reminded of the hope we have in Jesus. It's to come and serve. It's to come and love and be generous. And I'm telling you, it's not like I put on a headset and my problems disappear. I love coming here because I love being encouraged by every one of you. Because I need to be reminded Monday through Saturday exist. And there is brokenness and hurts and hoping. And so you are invited to gather with us, to come and behold his glory, to be encouraged. Let me read you the rest of the story because it's not over. After Moses said that, show me your glory, God does this. He says, all right, here's what I'm going to do for you. When my glory passes by, I'm going to put you in the cleft of a rock, and I'm going to cover you with my hand until I've passed by. It's not like the story ended and God was like, you can't do it, you're going to die. Let's move on. You know, you want to experience me? Here's how you experience me. I've got to do something for you to experience me. And it's the exact same story that we get today. See, we believe that Jesus is our rock. He is our cornerstone. It is on Christ, the solid rock, I stand. He is everything. And so God takes humanity, and to all who believe and all who receive, says you are now found in Jesus. If God were to look at Keith, he would see sin and brokenness and such ugliness. My morals don't stack up high enough to outweigh the sin. And God would say, I can't come close. You'll die. But wait. You're on the rock, Jesus. And instead of covering you with my hand, my son will open his arms and his blood will cover you. Meaning he will die so that you might come alive. Do you see the beauty in this story? And so today and this year, if you're saying, I'm not getting any of that, my world is so broken and I'm not standing on a rock, I'm standing on sand that is quickly just taking me in, you are invited to know Jesus. And no, it may not change every horizontal thing you're facing right now, but I'm telling you the inner peace that changes and the new life that we experience. And as Jesus said, you become born again. You are made new with new values and a new way to live. That is the Christmas story, that God sent his son to this world so that we might behold his glory. So which word is your struggle word today? Is it God? That you just don't see him at work and you can't believe that he is God? Would you take the limits off of him and let him do what he only can do in your life? Maybe it's the width. You're like Moses, you're terrified. You think the only way you're going to get close to God is if he kills you. Some of you were so afraid to come to church because you thought it would go up in flames. I know you did, right? We say things like that. If I go in there, this building's going down, man. No, not because of Jesus. He's here to be with. Maybe it's us, that you're in a place where you say, but I haven't believed, I haven't received him. What's stopping you today? I've been praying for you. Every day this week, I've been praying for this gathering, for every person who would come in here, that the Holy Spirit would stir your heart as you're hearing these words, to believe in Jesus, to take that step and say, listen, I'm going to start following him. I want to know Jesus. So I want to pray for you. And our team is going to lead us in this song once again. And as we sing, my hope is that it is not just lyrics to a song, but that it is you declaring, I behold his glory. Would you stand with me right now as we get ready to sing? I do believe God wants to show us his glory. And no, it's not going to come in the form of a smoking pot or a firestorm or wind or any of that. No, we have Jesus, the one and only Son of God, who came to this world, laid down his life. Yes, he was born as a baby in a manger, but he died and resurrected, and he is our soon returning King. There is hope in that. There is joy in that. And so as you move into the Christmas day and New Year's Day, do not move alone. Move with the glory of God, that we can sing and declare and believe we behold his glory in the highest. So our team is going to lead us in this, and as we sing, make it your prayer, not just a song.